Hi everyone. Today we're going to be talking about solving multi-step equations, and we're also going to solve equations involving consecutive integers. And one of the things when we talk about multi-step equations, a good practice to use is thinking about working backwards. And before we even talk about math, think about if you go to wrap a present. You have a gift, then you put it in a box, then you wrap it, then you put a ribbon on it. Well, then if we were working backwards, so if we receive the gift, first we take off the ribbon, then we unwrap it, then we take it out of the box, and we have the gift. So you can kind of think of that process as always working backwards to undo what the original equation was doing. So for example, here we have a number gets divided by 2, and I'm going to write this over here. So if we have a number and it gets divided by 2, and then 8 is subtracted from that quotient, the result is 16. So that's the original equation. If we want to find what n is, or what the original number is, we're going to work backwards. Well, since the last thing we did was subtract 8, we're going to undo that by adding 8. When we do that, now we have our number that got divided by 2. So to undo the division, now I'm going to multiply by 2. And so we discover that the original number was 48. So I just showed it to you in equation format. Here they're just talking about it, but it's the same thing. So we're going to work backwards. Let me cover up those answers here for a second. So let's try it with this one. A number gets divided by 3, then 4 is added to the quotient, and the result is 8. You could put it in equation form like I did up there, but I'm just going to work it backwards. So if our result was 8, I'm going to undo adding 4 by subtracting 4. And that gives me 4. Then I'm going to undo divided by 3 by multiplying by 3, since those are inverse operations. And I get that the original number is 12. Okay, so pause the video for a minute, try numbers 2 through 4, and see if you can work backwards to get the original amounts. Unpause when you're ready to check your answers. So here's the answers for 2 through 4. You can pause now to check those if you want. But now let's talk about true equation form. So when we have multi-step equations, that means we've got multiple things we have to do in order to isolate the variable. So much like what we just did above, if here's our original equation, the last thing that happened was adding 3. So we need to undo it by subtracting 3. And remember, whatever we do to one side, we always do to the other side. That leaves us with 5x equals 20. This is a multiplication. So to undo that multiplication, we have to divide by 5. And we get x equals 4. Okay, very good. Now, moving on to the back side, there's two problems I really want to focus on. Number 7, we have 7/8 times p minus 4 equals 10. So the last thing that happened was minus 4. So to undo that, I'm going to add 4 on both sides. So now I have 7/8 p equals 14. Okay, so now this is a multiplication, 7/8 times p. You can do two things here. I could divide by 7/8, or I can multiply by the inverse. Either one works just fine. Okay, so I'm going to multiply by 8/7. Well, here, since these are reciprocals being multiplied together, they cancel out to be 1p. So that's how I isolate p. Here, I can do 14 times 8/7, or I can say, well, 14 over 7 simplifies to 2, so 2 times 8 is 16. Okay, and in the interest of time in our notes, I'm not going to write out the check step, but of course, we would do a check step to make sure that it works. The other one I want to look at is number 8. Because of the fraction bar, a lot of students will mess this up. They'll try to add 12 first, but that's not what we need to do. The last thing that's actually happening here is dividing by 14. So we're going to start by undoing that, and we're going to multiply by 14. And if it helps you, since this is in fraction form, you can write 14 in fraction form just by sticking it over 1. And remember, we're going to do that to both sides. So now I have 224 equals d minus 12, because my 14s cancel out and become 1, and so I'm just left with d minus 12. So now to undo the minus 12, I'm going to add 12 to both sides. And I get 236 equals d. And again, I'm not going to show the check step in the interest of time, but of course we would do it. Okay, so what I want you to do right now is go ahead and pause the video and try these other 4 questions that I have up here. And at the end of the video, I'll put the answers up so that you can check your work. Last but not least, I want to talk about consecutive integers, which we introduced in class today. So I'm not going to go over everything we talked about in class because this chart kind of sums it up right here. But I do want to show you a practice question. So in number 11 here, it says find 3 consecutive integers whose sum is 196. So our first integer, we're going to represent by x. It's talking about a sum of integers, so I'm going to add them together. My next integer is going to be x plus 1. And then my third integer will be x plus 2. So there's my sum of 3 consecutive integers. Remember, those parentheses are not necessary in reality. It just helps us kind of visualize that these are 3 separate integers being represented, but you don't have to use them. And the sum is 96. Okay, well, when I add my like terms together, I end up with 3x plus 3 equals 96. Then I subtract 3 on both sides, and I get 3x equals 93. This is 3 times x, so to undo that, I'm going to divide by 3 on both sides, and I get x equals 31. Okay, but I'm not done. That's not really answering the question. The question says find the 3 consecutive integers. So my answer would be that 31 is my first integer, so then 32 would be the next integer, and 33 would be the third integer. And then we can check that by actually adding them up and making sure we get a sum of 96, which we do. I'll verify that for you. Okay, so now try the next 2 questions, 12 and 13. Pause the video and come back when you're ready to see the answers. Okay, here's the answers for 5 through 10. You can pause this and check your work. And then here's the answers for 12 and 13. You can pause it and check your work. Okay, write down any questions you might have for me and make sure you ask me in class tomorrow. Have a great night.